And we have Beasty facing off against Numudan over here. Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to one of our Swedes. Baltun had to say farewell to the tournament in the series played against Vortex. But now we have Beasty facing off against the other Swede in the bracket. Beasty, he's going to kick things off with the Malians on Sunken Lands, and on the other side, Numudan is going to bring in Jushi. And, first time we're going to see Sunken Lands today, Soccerton.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Although I think it's going to play out kind of similarly to Carmel, actually. I think we're going to see this matchup feature some pro scouts. I think it's going to look kind of similar to that Chinese Zushi game we had a series or two ago. So that'd be my expectation coming in. Of course, in this matchup, Beasty pretty heavily favored coming in, obviously. So Numudan's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to try to get the incredible upset. Although I think most people would expect Beasty to have this series. That said, there's always the opportunity. So it's not always about the destination, it's about the journey and how we get there. So, and Beasty's got to still prove he can get there and beat out Numudan. And it starts here in Sunken Lands in just a couple seconds.
Into game number 1 we go. It's Beasty versus Numudan. We kick things off on Sunken Lands. And here we go. Sunken Lands. Not something that we've seen today, Soccerton, but Numudan is going to have the Jushi under his command with the color red. On the other side, Beasty with the color yellow as the Malians. And you touched on a great detail at the beginning in the pregame. This map could play out very similar to Carmel because there are some similarities in the style of the map. A lot of hunt available, very, very hunt-heavy map we're talking about. And at the same time, the gold veins are much smaller than normal. So I do believe 2 out of your 3 gold veins that you start with are only 1,600 gold each. Back when I was testing this map, I saw at least 1 gold spot with 4,000 gold on it. Nonetheless, it's not like you have a plenty of gold here on this map. In fact, gold access may be very, very limited. There is a 4,000 gold mine on the side of each player, but the standard gold spots are 1,600 each.
Well, that's no surprise then why we see Civ like Malians and Zushi, which both can get passive gold generation available to them, be played on this map. Obviously, Malians with pit mines and their whatnot can get passive gold and taxes for Zushi. So both Civs can work around that. And again, both Civs can pro scout. So like I was saying, I think it's going to be a very similar game, or at least could be a very similar game to that Chinese Zushi game we saw on Carmel earlier.
Yeah, and speaking of pro scouts, that's something I wanted to touch on. It's a great point that you bring up because that kind of explains the rationale behind picking Malians here. You might think, oh, this map has a lot of hunt. Why would you pick Malians? Malians have an insane cow boom. What's up with that? I don't think it's going to be a game where we see a lot of cow booming from Beasty. I think it's going to be pro scouts. And because he's got the warrior scouts, he's going to have the upper hand fighting off the scouts from Numudan. Of course, Numudan can respond to that with horsemen, or he can respond to that with spearmen. But that will force Numudan to add some additional combat units early on just to deal with Beasty's normal scouts, per se.
Yeah, Beasty has the luxury of both of his golds being in the back top north corner there. So he'll have that first pit mine get up and going. He's also got the wood, a really good wood spawn as well. He's got 2 woods in the front and in back, so he's got some room to work with here. Could easily defend this, I think, in Feudal Age. Age up underway. Manticore, no surprise there in Meditation Gardens. Pretty good spot for that, actually. Is that touching the gold? I think it might just be. Yes, indeed. Okay, so that's actually a really nice spot. Gets the berries, gets the stone, gets some wood, and that gold. So even more passive gold there for Numudan. That's actually a really nice spot so close to home.
And it's a nice little spot. I like it a lot. It's always tricky, especially on these very wide open maps, to get a good spot for your meditation gardens, because oftentimes the resources are spread out quite a bit. But this one is a nice little spot. And I want to touch on one little detail here in terms of the map spawn. The left side of Numudan is very well protected. He's got multiple layers of wood lines, and he's going to have no issues with wood access. But his right side is very, very open. In comparison, Beasty has his forests kind of evenly spread out across, or around his base, I should say. And because of that, I don't think he's going to have any major challenges just getting that whole corner walled off and be safe at home.
We're getting news that apparently there's been a crash. Unfortunately, Beasty has crashed, and we're going to have to remake the match, which is unfortunate because I think Beasty had a pretty good spawn right there. So unfortunately, we'll have to reset on this one and go again. Man. Unfortunate, because I think if you're Beastie, you're really sad you crashed there. I think that was actually a really nice spawn. That might actually favor Numudan just a bit.
Yeah, that's unlucky. But at the same time, it's a lucky thing that it happened while, you know, nothing
Early in the
significant
game? Yeah.
happened. There was no kills whatsoever, so it was an easy remake. Unlucky that you had a good map spawn, but it is what it is.
Yeah. That feels, if you're Beastie, I'm feeling pretty sad about the crash. That's frustrating. I hate when that happens. But again, to your point, at least it's not like going to cost you the game early enough that it's not going to be no harm, no foul, really. Not like you've been so far that we have to make an admin choice or something like that. So thankfully that's avoided. But and what it really ends up is we just waste 5 minutes. But that's fine. You know, we can reset and go again, and we can have an idea of what's going to come in the second.
Well, let's take a look at the other maps, though, in the meantime. I think that's a good thing to look at while we're waiting for this game to be remade. We also have Carmel. So, you know, we touched on this thing where Malians will be a really good deer fairy civilization here. Well, you're going to use it up on Sunken land, so you're going to have a different plan for Carmel. And Beastie has no Chinese. He has HRE, which sounds like a plausible option there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I'd go for in that situation. Yeah, maybe Mongols? Yeah.
Mongols would be a little funky, but going early Kashyyyks is not a terrible idea. It's going to give you a lot of map control. So I wonder if you're going to play a slightly funky game there with the Mongols.
Interesting that
Yeah, those are the
Beastie
civs I can envision on Carmel.
Beastie's bans are not like everyone else's bans if you look at it, because he's banned from Numudan, Chinese, Lancaster, and Byzantines. Some very pointed choices there. So letting Templars get through, letting Rus get through. Very interesting choices.
I think Chinese is a message to the maps that we have. As you said, you already have Jushi. If you have Chinese, you're also set for Carmel, I presume. Lancaster, we've seen how dominant they can be on Frisian Marshes. So I absolutely agree with the Lancaster ban. I see the rationale behind the Chinese ban. Byzantines is the one that's a little tricky. It's interesting that he lets Rus through. I don't blame him for the Byzantines ban. Like, Byzantines can be a nasty civilization to deal with. But I wonder...
Rus, like, that's where it's like, like, I think I'd rather go against... But then again, like, they're pretty up there. Like, both civs are pretty good.
It's so funny that we barely see any Rus being played because it's practically banned all the time.
It's such a good civ. I mean, when has Rus been bad in the history of this game?
I'm honestly starting to feel like, you know, the Rus, him letting through the Rus is more of a message, basically saying, well, it's so rarely played that I literally just need to come up with a game plan to deal with them. And I would dare to say that probably some of the players are not even practicing a lot of Rus because they know it's going to be banned.
So you think this might be like a reverse psychology of like, it's been banned so much, you're rusty with it. Let me just take it on. I think I can beat it still.
Almost like that. It's not like you have to come up with 27 different game plans to beat Rus because you see so many variations of it. It's almost like, you know, oh shoot, we have to play Rus. How do I play this civ again?
I don't know if that holds true at this high level though. That's my one thing. But then again, maybe. So that'll be something if Beastie wins this, you'll have to ask him about that, because I'm genuinely curious as to the thought process behind not letting Rus be banned, letting that one through. As we've got just a couple seconds before we are underway again, take 2 on Sunken Lands. Lights, camera, action as we dive in.
So here we go, a bit of a remake after a crash, but once again we have Beastie facing off against Numudan, Beastie with the color yellow as the Malians, and on the other side, down south, we have Numudan playing as Jushi's Legacy in red. This time around, the map gods were a lot less loving
Biased.
towards Beastly, I would say. I would dare to say that the two maps are right now very balanced, though. Both players
Yes.
had their woodline spawn to the back, so it's almost a perfectly mirrored map that we see here.
Yeah, I would definitely say this, like, Numudan's not getting some kind of, like, god tier spawn, but neither's Beasty. Like, this is a much more even. The last match, Beasty did have a really nice spawn for what Malians wanted to do. This one definitely feels a bit more, dare I say, even more fair for both players for what they want to go for. But we'll see how they react. If you're Beasty again, you're kind of kicking yourself a little bit like, man, why did the game have to crash right then? Because that was a really good opportunity. But, I mean, he could still easily win with Malians here. This is still a very doable job. Well, again, to reiterate, I do expect Pro Scouts to be on the table here, possibly for both civs. Bizin and Zushi already looks like it's kind of gearing up towards that, kind of opening with the village, building the mill right there. Pretty good sheep haul there for Numudan thus far. He's finding a good number.
Nice little wake up. He benefits a lot more from the sheep than Beastie will. He does have the Jew sheep buff. And again, most of the food income is going to revolve around the deer. But still, having that backup is really good. And especially for Numudan, he's going to get a nice little buff there with the Jew sheep males as well. So, good thing that he has a decent haul, but it's not going to be the deciding factor between either of these players.
Feels like Byzantines in that regard, right? Byzantines is the same way. They get some extra sheep, like, yeah, you don't really care too much. Malians, yeah, you don't really care. Some civs, you don't mind as much as others if you get as many sheep. Like, they're always nice, and you always want to deny them from your opponent, but you don't always necessarily need them for yourself as badly. I mean, they could always be helpful later, of course. 7 houses around the pit mine. That's been pretty standard. You know, it's interesting to see how the meta has shifted around the pit mines and the houses for Malians. Because back in the day, going for 4 was considered like the full amount, and going for anything more was considered super duper greedy. And nowadays, 7 and like is just the standard. 6 to 7 is just so normal nowadays. Pretty good meditation gardens there too.
Oh, that's a beautiful one. I love how it touches a little patch of trees even.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the deer don't really add to that number, but the berries, gold, and some trees, you won't be too displeased with that. Wish Numudan would move those sheep just a little closer to the mill. You might run into the instance where a villager might drop off at the town center instead of at the mill for the bonus. So far, they're going to the right spot, but you do run the risk of it being so close to the town center that they might path towards the town center to drop off and not get the bonus and not get the taxes for it. Well, we're underway here. Feudal Age just seconds away from popping up. We see the mill. That does seem like it's going to be angling towards a Pro Scout build potentially. Of course, you could just go straight into cow booming, but why would you not go Pro Scouts when you got all the deer on this map? Beasty's got 2 very close deer packs and that one in the down corner to the east, as well as a corner to the west if he wants to get really aggressive with it.
Yeah, so the trick is on this map is that you have more in that corner than just a pack of deer that you can ferry in with Pro Scouts. You have a boar, and you also have a bunch of berries. So, and the whole thing is actually fairly well wallable. So this would be a really beautiful spot for just an extension of your base and really walk out there with villagers. But it's also something that's extremely risky, so usually that's not being done simply because you don't want to put your villagers in harm's way. But, you know, if we were living in a 2-town center meta, you would actually see the second town center being dropped in that area. That would be a really good spot for a second DC. It's just that justifying that second town center investment and walking all the way out there is what's kind of deterring the players from doing so.
Maybe for Zushi, I think Malians, even if 2TC was the meta, I don't think Malians would go out on there because you can't take the boar, right? That's not available to you. And you don't really need the berries as much because you're going to have the cow boom. So I feel like the Pro Scouts still feels very tempting with that deer pack. That said, I agree. It's a beautiful spot. If the 2TC meta was in, I think like someone like Abbasid would love to just park one right down there.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's Malians are always a little funky with their food income because the ability and the desire to go for the cattle just changes everything that you have.
Pro Scouts for Numudan already underway. Be quick about it too. Nothing like that for Beasty just yet. He's going more for Donzo, so maybe he's looking to deny instead of going for it for himself, which I don't disagree with. Again, you're going to have food with the cow boom, so you don't need it as badly. And he did get a pretty good number of sheep still. Numudan's build looks pretty textbook to me as far as going for Pro Scouts. We do see the first Donzo coming in, looking to disturb the peace of the meditation gardens.
I wonder how Beast's POV looks like. It's interesting that those Donzos are shifting towards the meditation gardens here, but he's got perfect vision, so looks like he is just coming into Torch, and he's not trying to, for example, deny the Pro Scouts, at least not for the time being.
In a way, those spears being there denies that deer pack right there. That's kind of 2 for 1 right now. It's actually a pretty good value for Beasty. That said, Numudan can still just go grab the other packs, and that's what he's doing right now, as we see he heads to the east to grab that pack there. However, Beasty ever alert, sending us Donzo to head that way as well. And just to almost kill a scout there. Some spears of Numudan's trying to defend, but that scout's going to have to go find a different quarry or wait a second for those spears to clean up.
And Jugenu are being added now by Numudan, which is something that Beasty should be very happy about. Donzo Javelin is probably the favorite combo that Malians want to play, and indeed Javelins will be on the way. Now, yep, that's what I was going to say. Given that Beasty is not going for the deer, it's almost guaranteed that he wants to play cattle, and he's actually very aggressive moving on to the cattle. He already has 3 garrisoned. He's got 2 more coming in. And it actually makes a lot of sense. If you can slow down Numudan's Pro Scouts build, he's not going to have an awful lot of food. And more importantly, because Numudan is focused on collecting deer carcasses, it's not like he's all in on aggression. So you can afford to be a little greedier with your own economy and just build the cattle up a little bit more rapidly.
Yeah, it's definitely the payoff, right? He's not going Pro Scouts, therefore he's going to go for cattle, and it makes total sense. He might... Ooh, that scout's looking kind of weak. Jugenu coming in to save the day. Scout should be able to get away. That was dangerously close, though. And here's the tricky thing, though, is Pro Scouts is such a big power spike. However, it doesn't last forever. Whereas what Beasty is doing is investing in a much longer, sustainable way of playing. Like, he'll be down a little bit now, as we see this Gonzo's getting taken out by the 3 Jugs. But once Beasty gets online, he's going to stay online, whereas Zushi at some point is going to have to methodically pivot and into a farm transition, which isn't necessarily the hardest thing in the world, but for Zushi, which is so food dependent, it can sometimes hit like a brick wall.
So here's the thing. You're right. I agree with you that in the long run, this is all a Malian setup. The concern for Beasty is that, first off, Numudan is going to beat him to Costlage by a massive margin. Yeah. Second, with so much hunt on the map, if you bring in most of those carcasses, it's going to last quite long here for Numudan. Although, Beasty is now taking some of the deer on his side. If he can take those 2 deer packs, it's not too bad. But I think if you're Numudan, what you're seriously contemplating is getting Palace Guards going and getting up to Costlage. It's difficult to deal.
I wish I had a Gaia destroyed value right now for the boar.
What I was going to say is, it's difficult to deal with Donzo Javelin, but Palace Guards are one of the few things that can actually accomplish that. Of course, there is an answer to that, the Musafati Warriors, but I would say Palace Guard and Archer would be a really nice combo here for Numudan. And again, he's pushing Beasty back right now, as he's also getting ready to age.
I wish those spears with the Donzos would have turned around right then and gotten the horseman while they had a shot. Instead, Beasty, yeah, you're right, having to force his way back in. You're right, there is the window. It's a window, right? Numudan, his window is open to take over the map and flood the earth with his units. At this point, Beasty's game is, again, he's playing the long game, right? And that precludes surviving for the long game. And so far, Numudan's doing a pretty good job of doing what he needs to do. Now, the cows, 11 of 20. That's all. And the cool thing about going for a cow boom is that you're getting returns on that investment the moment the cow is born, basically. The moment that cow gets going, he's giving you food back. So that's what makes it so good, right? Eventually, once it just starts making enough, it'll just snowball into an amazing timing for Beasty. However, Montlu Academy coming up now as Numudan is getting ready to age up to castle.
Yeah, just to your point about the return of investment, Beasty already has 1,000 food per minute in comparison to 800 from Numudan. Now, not all of that comes from cattle, but it kind of highlights how quickly that return of investment actually comes in. The drawback is that you spent a lot of your resources on getting that cattle boom going, so your army is not necessarily as big as it could be, and you're nowhere close to aging up just yet. So this is the window that Numudan will need to exploit. He's got quite a few Jugenu. Doesn't have a lot of palace guards, though, and that concerns me a little, I think. The problem is that he's going to reach castle. He's also going to secure some of the relics, which is going to be a nice little benefit. But I just don't see him being able to strike Beasty immediately. And Beasty is now piling up resources for castle.
Yep, the cow boom is pretty much online, 16 to 20. That is already bolstering Beasty's military numbers now, and is going to help his eco. And look at the number; it's already 9,800 a minute or so to Numudan's. It's very neck and neck. Even with pro scouts, Beasty is keeping up. And the gold, it's only going to take him a minute to get the resources he needs to age up behind this. And right as Numudan gets ready to start moving out, Beasty's got this military mass right here. And if anyone can defend, it's going to be Beasty, right? Like, he's one of those guys who just knows how to stick it and stay around for the late game if he needs to.
Still, this is the window here for Numudan. Beasty's not clicking yet. It's going to be a Grand Felonic Corral. There's no doubt about that. With the bolt magazines coming in, with a couple more palace guards, I think this army is starting to look pretty good. Not the biggest fan of Lancers over palace guards. But I love the wolves from Beasty. He is trying to funnel these units into direct combat. And I think the build-up is too slow from Numudan. I just don't see anything.
Time, right?
I just don't see anything that can deal with the javelin throwers. And all that Beasty needs to do is just stay under his town center, use the javelins, the long range they have to pick off some units. In fact, most of this army is very light. The javelins will do reasonably well, even against all those horsemen. And Beasty is about to click himself. I don't think this attack is going to be sufficient for Numudan.
Yeah, and that's not to say that Numudan can't do any damage here. It's just that it's not a killing blow. As the Grand Felonic Corral comes up, Cow Boom is soon to be fully operational. As the Horseman Lancers trying to look for some damage, villagers immediately pulling back. And into the base, Numudan goes. All he'll find is cattle. Those vills sneaking up on the north side. That's funny. Just right past the horsemen. Meanwhile, yeah, this thing is now, it feels like Beasty's kind of playing with Numudan just a little bit, right? Like, the cat and mouse just favors him. Like, Numudan having to pull out and get out of there just gives Beasty even more time. And it feels like the snowball starting to get a little big.
Yeah, that's the main problem that you see here. Now you have a fully set up cow boom. And sustainability is a lot less established, I guess, on Numudan's side. He doesn't have his farm transition yet. We don't see an overwhelming villager advantage. We don't see an army advantage. And what's worse is that we're not seeing a huge relic advantage either. He is going to have 3 relics if all goes well for him. Perhaps he can secure the 4th one in the middle. But right now, it's not like he's sitting on 5 relics or he's got a much bigger army. And as you touched on this, the window is closing very, very rapidly because once that cow boom is set up for the Malians, it's extremely difficult to cut into that.
Yeah, and food is about to start becoming an issue for Numudan. The deer and the sheep are probably running out right about now. It's about the 15 to 20 minute mark is when that usually happens. Yeah, he's getting 3 relics, but that's not going to compare to the cow boom. And he's going to have to move out on the map for food. And while Beasty's military is a bit slow and lumbering, as we see a religious unit dying right there, it is powerful and it has to be respected. And without any, buildings to defend, Numudan's going to have a hard time going out on the map for more food. As we see, he's trying to push him out, but it is a prickly porcupine of Beasty's units moving in. Donzo's onto the Lancers. Can they break through? The Javelins hitting on the back line.
Oh boy, it's going to be a cleanup. And again, once again, we see Javelin throwers dominate. But really, this was one of those games where there were little skirmishes all over the board, but this really comes down to just the economic prowess of Malians. And I feel like a broken record, but we've been saying this for quite some time. the thing with the Cattles is that once you have that established, it's extremely difficult for the opponent to do anything against it. You cannot just dive with cavalry unless you have overwhelming numbers. It's extremely difficult to damage the Malian economy, and it's a very, very powerful economy. And I think in this case, Numudan was very focused on bringing in the deer carcasses. By the time he really was ready to go, even though he had an advantage in Castle Age, Beasty had enough forces back at home to stall things out and just leverage the cows.
But now it just feels like it's too late as Donzos and Javs poke their opponent death with a million paper cuts. Beasty takes game 1 in pretty convincing fashion against Numudan. And, you know, I'm kind of impressed. He just said, you know, like, you can go for pro scouts. That's fine. I've got cattle. I'm fine. Like, and I'll pester you the entire time you do it, too. Whereas you got to come into my base to deal with my cattle. Whereas I can just be out on the map and just poke and prod and slow your timing down while equally getting more out of what I'm getting with my cows. So Beasty showing why Malians and why Javelins are such a good unit. But I gotta say, my perception of Javelins has been slowly climbing of late. Like Vortex mentioned, I think in his interview with you, that he felt like Javelins weren't really the meta. Maybe they're not the case. Like that longbow might be more the case for mercenaries, for Byzantines. But we've been seeing some pretty good evidence, at least anecdotally today, as to why Javelins are such a good unit.
Yeah, today has been a Javelin fiesta so far, that is for sure. And we have Byzantines on Beasty's side still available, which could also play Javelins. And who knows, you know, having looked at the draft, we've been debating about Beasty's choice related to the banning of the Byzantines instead of the Rus. He let Rus through, banned Byzantines, and who knows, maybe he regards Javelin throwers so high that he doesn't want to face off against them. Nonetheless, he's up 1-0 now, and we're going to continue things on a slightly more conventional map, Dry River. And Beasty, I do believe that's going to be Numudan who's going to have the access to the Templars here.
Yeah, into Mongols. That is... I am very fascinated to see. I don't think I've seen that matchup on this map yet. I mean, you don't see Dry River every single day. And I also haven't seen Mongols and Templars a whole bunch. So this matchup is actually, on this map, is new to me. So I'm kind of excited to see what Beasty has cooking and what Numudan's going to try and do. But man, this game, it was all about just the prickly porcupine of Donzos and Javs. Well played by Beasty and just letting the cows carry him to victory. And we got 2 minutes before we dive into our next game. So yeah, what do you think about this Dry River with, what do you think of, what does Mongols do here against Knights Templar?
I know what the Mongols do at the beginning of the game, or at least one thing that they could do, and that's harass any attempt to fish. I don't know if Beasty's going to go for that. It's very possible we're going to see a totally passive Dark Age, simply because Numudan is aware that Beasty can deny the fishing, and because Numudan is not going to fish, Beasty is just going to totally give up on the whole thing. Mid-game, I'm expecting Keshiks. I think it's a very open map, and Keshiks scream like a unit that can be leveraged really well on a setup like this. You can go for raids. You will probably have constant fighting going on. This map is not necessarily one that you can wall well. So I think we're going to see a lot of aggression going on, probably from Beasty's side more so than we will from Numudan. And if you want my guess, I'm thinking quite a few Keshiks out here for Beasty.
Yeah, I'd expect that. I wouldn't be surprised to see some Khan's Hunters out, or maybe even just a couple of Mengadai. I don't expect them to mass these, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of them with how open it is. Just try and pick off those villagers, the pilgrims, I mean. Having some kind of raiding unit that could just go and find the pilgrims. Of course, Keshiks could fill that role very easily, too. Yeah, I feel like with Mongols in Beasty's hands, I'm not sure what Numudan's going to do with Knights Templar to do this. Obviously, Templar can get really rolling, and obviously those keeps, if they can get those keeps in the right spots and defend their pilgrims, they can get a lot of passive gold. But it's going to be, Numudan's going to have his work cut out for him here. Beasty could be quite dangerous with Mongols, as we all know. We got 10 seconds before we dive in.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Knights Templar here, though, because the thing I love about them is their versatility. So many cool units at their disposal, and there's just there are so many ways to play this. There are no two games that are similar. With the Templars, we head into game number 2. Beasty with the Mongols in ELO facing off against Numudan's Knights Templar here on Dry River.
Yeah, like you said, Knights Templar so versatile. It's hard to like some matchups we look at it and we kind of just know, like Byzantines and French, we kind of know what to expect, right? Like we just kind of know. With Knights Templar and Mongols on this map, you never know. And you mentioned that you didn't think Numudan would go for fishing. He is going to tempt fate and maybe try and outsmart Beasty here and say, well, if you don't expect me to do it because it's so obviously not the right choice, I'm going to do it anyways because you weren't expecting it. As he goes onto the water trying to get some fish. Beasty, of course, doing Mongol things, on out and about, looking for some sheep to gather in.
It's a balancing act because, again, we talked about this. Logic dictates that you don't go for a dock against the Mongols because the Mongols will just torch it down. At the same time, maybe Numudan says, okay, if I go for a dock, and do keep in mind, Templars gather wood a lot faster, I can force my opponent to invest into the Rex. Essentially, what you're saying if you're Numudan is that I want Beasty to do this, I want him to commit to torching this down. And this way, you essentially establish the early tempo of the game by dictating what your opponent has to do. And because Numudan gets a lot of wood income, it's not inconceivable that he says, okay, I can afford to do this whole thing much more so than Beasty can in Dark Age. And fair enough, don't forget, Mongols don't have a great economy at the beginning of the game, so they are not the biggest fans of investing large amounts of stuff into early aggression. Double production helps a lot, of course, but nonetheless, in comparison, Numudan's economy is just going to be much, much better.
Barracks coming up for Numudan as well, anticipating some fighting having to happen. He's probably going to have to. I guess my question then is, okay, you're baiting this. You are saying I'm wanting this to happen then. By placing it here, you're asking for it, essentially. What's your follow-up? What I mean, you're saying that you think you've got the better eco and that Beasty's going to have a hard time keeping up. And we see that here with the barracks coming up. Numudan's already understanding the name of the game here, that aggression is on the table.
I think you trade spears.
Yeah?
Here's what you do, I think. If you trade spears, first off, Beast is going to run out of his stone, and that's going to make double production of Keshiks or whatever else a little bit more difficult. Second, if you go heavy into spearmen, if you're Numudan, which you can already do, you can start scaling your spearman count now, you kind of force Beast to play archers, and that's fine because you can pick your Hospitaller Commandery, or actually, I was going to say Kingdom of France Commandery for Feudal Age, and go for the Chevalier. So I think some of this could be just kind of trying to get Beasty to start pivoting into archers in response to your Spearman, and you go heavy into the Chevalier plus Spearman combo. That's my rough guess.
I could see that being the case. I think that is a pretty good call. And then those trade pretty well into Keshiks as well.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is that the investment from Numudan, he only has his third Spearman coming out just now. Beasty went all in. Look at that, 9 spears. And that could quickly shift the balance of power. If Beasty has overwhelming spear numbers and beats his opponent to Feudal, he's going to be the one saying, well, I'm just going to go Keshik spears. Good luck bringing your own cavalry.
Now, Numudan knows about this. He can see these spears, obviously, as his dock is being under siege. So maybe that changes, changes the calculus a little bit. Maybe you lean away from going all cav and maybe try and do something a little bit different, as we see the little bonus in resources to Beasty. And that's why, conventional wisdom says don't do this, because you just gave 50 resources to Beasty. Not to mention you've invested resources into this that you're now going to lose out on. And maybe you've gotten some gain out of it with the fishing boats, but it's hard to point to where that return is right now.
And again, the thing is that Dark Age spear fights, the longer they are, the worse they are for Mongols. But early on, when they have the double training, it usually benefits the Mongols greatly. They can produce units quicker, so they have that bigger swarm potential. And at the same time, it's a lot smaller of a resource investment in comparison to what other Sifs have to commit. And this is the problem for Numudan. Like, if this fight were to drag out for 5 more minutes, the Knights Templar would actually start taking over. But it's not going to drag for that long, because Beasty, he went for essentially 6 pairs of spearmen, and then 1 single produced one, and now he's aging up to the next stage. And
Numudan has got the gold, but doesn't have the food to age up. He's trying to match the spear count.
It's It's a big
This might have
difference.
been a risk that's blowing up in his face right now. I'm thinking maybe he went in too deep and tried doing something too outlandish, because he can't age up. And Beasty's going up with Deerstones right this second.
If you do the math, if you double produce spears, you get 2 for the price of 1. Spearman is 60 food, so given that the 2 players have exactly the same amount of spears, that means that Numudan spent approximately 360 food more than Beasty did on this. And that's basically what he's missing for Feudal.
And there's the Feudal Age going in for Beasty right now, and now he is just so firmly in the driver's seat. And again, I just keep going back to the thought, like, conventional wisdom says, don't do this on water, at a water map against Mongols, like a hybrid thing like this. It just doesn't work. You see, he's desperately building that dock back, trying to get the food from the fishing ships, needs to make sure he gets the return on that investment. But at this point, is it going to be too late? We see Kingdom of France has been clicked up about a minute away. And
Again,
you're gonna make horsemen and knights into spears. It feels so bad, doesn't it?
Spearmen are now hardened for Beasties, so once again, you cannot fight this if you're Numudan. Some Mangudai casually coming out. One thing that helps here for Numudan is that he's got a good wood income with the Knights Templar. So maybe he thinks, okay, it's fine to lose the dock if I can rebuild it. I don't think he expected the Spearman to show up this quick, though. If he reaches Feudal and he has this dock up, he can get a galley out and make things a little bit more difficult for Beastie. But this dock didn't really accomplish much, and Beastie once again gets the reward for it. It's not even the 25 food, it's the 25 gold that's really beneficial for Beastie here. Nice little interception, though.
That'll be nice. Unfortunately, the dock's already up, so he's gonna have to take time torching it if he wants to get it down.
This
We'll take a villa kill, you know.
Is Beastie making a combat ship? Yes, he is, and that's the Deerstones moving across the map. Beastie isn't messing around here.
I think he can smell blood in the water. I think he sees his advantage and is just gonna,
Literally.
pedal to the metal, dig the knife in as deep as he can.
Numudan snuck out all the way to the south. He's got a second dock coming up. But this is the big difference. You get the Feudal Age and you have a combat ship, and that's going to limit what you can do if you're Numudan. That's one of the tricky elements of this map. Having control over the pawns means that you have the ability to influence land combat with those ships on those pawns.
Those Mangudai I see in the back there? Yes, indeed. Along with a Khan's Hunter.
Oh, it's a Mangudai. It's a good choice here. I like it a lot. Helps you chase down these stragglers. And here's the thing. As long as you have that front line in front, and you do not run the risk of enemy spearmen just charging at you, at your Mangudai at least, it's a really good unit. You can just run around, and it's going to pick off most of the spears very efficiently. An easy cleanup here for Beastie, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I love the choice to go with the 2 Mangudai and the 1 Khan's Hunter along with the Khan, just to get the bonuses that come with that. And yeah, spears just drop like flies. I mean, there's pretty much nothing Numudan can do about this. Now Deerstone's on the front.
Stylishly, he put them right next to the deer. After all, the name is Deerstones.
They don't call them sheepstones.
And now, with all that momentum, Beastie is securing the pawns for himself, so he's going to start pulling ahead in economy. There's actually an indirect effect of this Deerstones being here, and it's scouting intel. Beastie knows fully well that archers are coming because, well, he saw them coming along. In fact, he has a rough idea of how many units his opponent has even.
And we see more and more Mangudai coming out. They don't trade great against archers, but they are mobile, they are quick, and they'll just tear up these spears. And again, the numbers just look like they favor Beastie here. Mangudai able to pick off even an archer or two. I feel like now it's just any second now that he'll pivot into some Keshiks to go with it. Numudan is on some pawns. He is getting some more fishing going. He's trying to stay in this one. I like that he's going wide. I think it's a really good choice. You know, you've gotta find a way to sneak out and get some resources behind this. The tricky thing is that Beastie's pretty wise in terms of knowing what's up around the map. And he'll probably sniff those out sooner than later. How many docks can you fit on a pond?
Yeah,
I mean,
it
one already
feels like we're
kinda
looking at
silly.
New York City apartments.
Kind of like one. I mean, these docks already look kind of big on some of these smaller ponds to the point where it feels kind of funny to do. You have two. Reminds me of like I've got across my work. There's a little pond where people sail little tiny miniature sailboats, and that's kind of what it reminds me of.
So Numudan is heavy on the archers, and Beasty is going full Mangadai right now. Now,
Yeah, he's
in a direct
fully
fight,
into that.
all they will do is Mangadai against the archers. So Beasty's gonna need another component to this. But again, if he makes a pivot to Keshix, there's nothing that Numudan can do.
I'm dying over here at the manga die comment. That was I'm losing it.
You haven't heard that before?
I'm surprised that in all my years of playing and watching and casting this game, I have not heard that before. Oh gosh. You're not wrong though. Head to head, they won't hold a candle to archers. The problem is BC does not need to take a head to head fight right now.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh.
So if you get into Keshix and Mangadai together, which is a very pricey combo, you're going to have something that can deal with pure archers, and you're going to have a much higher level of mobility. I love the walls from Numudan, though. The single thing that Keshix will be, or Mangadai will be extremely upset about will be walls. They can literally not do anything against those.
Yeah, that's exactly what Numudan's trying to do. Ooh, demo! Nice play there. Snuck that one in under BT's nose. Got that Hulk down and out of the way.
Oh, this game is starting to get very chaotic. Fights on multiple ponds, random groups of units running around, and the Kashyyyk, or I guess I should say the Mangadai, I love the use of the Falcon here.
Oh.
He deploys the Falcon over the forest to provide line of sight so the Mangadai can shoot over.
Best air unit in the game, what can I say?
Well, it's not like you have a lot of air units, right?
Exactly.
And there we go, look at that!
That's game called. Just when I was going to say that like BC needs to be careful not to lose the plot a little bit here, because Numudan is trying to make something happen there. But I think it was just too much. Beasty takes game number 2 in a very funny, chaotic game. That was a treat to watch. That was just silly.
I do not necessarily know what the plan was. Perhaps Numudan anticipated a different civilization.
Yeah, possibly.
Or perhaps he underestimated how quickly these spearmen can arrive, or maybe he underestimated how Beasty, or how much Beasty is going to commit to this. Because Beasty went all in with those spears. He wasn't messing around. Perhaps Numudan anticipated Beasty to be a little bit more conservative and just settle for 5, 6 spears. It's enough to torch down the dock. But Beasty just doubled down with 15, 20 spears, and Numudan could never fight into that.
Yeah, there maybe is a temptation to think of Beasty as like a really defensive player, but that's not his only facet, right? Like he can play super aggressive, as we see here. He's happy to double down when he sees an opportunity, just throwing those spears out, getting on the docks himself. He can play to what you give him, and when you give him a dock on a water map and he's playing Mongols, he's gonna do exactly what you saw there. Maybe Numudan was hoping for some other different kind of reaction, but BC's gonna make the right reaction more often than not, as we saw there, and takes it for game 2.
Well, that puts Beasty on to match point right here, and we will have that match point on Frisian Marshes. Byzantine's not a surprise. Ottomans is an interesting choice, especially given that you have other options available. Rus, Japanese.
Yeah, why?
And a Rus would go unused. If Numudan loses here, Rus would go unused.
That is a very interesting choice. You've got Rus. It's snuck through the draft, and we're not going to use it. I mean, that is so interesting to me to see. And we're going to go with Ottomans, which, I mean, okay. I'm not saying Ottomans can't win a game. They're definitely formidable in many ways, but, I wonder, maybe he just feels really confident in this game. Maybe he just really doesn't like Rus on Frisian Marshes. I'm really curious what the thought process here is on that, because it feels like Rus just doesn't have a bad map. So why would you not use it to stay in their series? And maybe he thinks he can win this with Ottomans and then maybe pull Rus out in the next one. Or maybe he had Rus in mind for a very specific map. But at any rate, it's going to be Byzantines against Ottomans. And I think Byzantines is, I mean, that's always a good, Byzantines is one of those civs that, again, that feels good on most maps, in my opinion.
The weird thing here with the whole Rus story is that he's the one losing the games, so he's the one picking the next map. If he wanted to bring in Roos
That's
on
true.
a very specific map, he
Yeah.
could have done it. Which implies that he either doesn't like Roos that much, even though that was his first pick, or as you said, the only other logical explanation is that it's going to be his quote-unquote decider game Civilization if he goes into game number 4, game number 5. But right now, that's that feels like a stretch.
Like, yeah,
I don't know what to
exactly, 'cause,
expect
like,
from
I feel
Ottomans
like-
on Frisian Marshes.
Same, and I'm thinking like maybe you think, oh, I want Roos to be the decider, but the problem is you're going to that's great, but you're playing against Beasty, who is you're down 2-0. I mean, you gotta throw whatever you can. I mean, maybe you don't want to have a situation where you win the game with Roos and you don't have a way to follow it up. But I'd rather win a game than not. You know, so it feels like why would you not pull out what is arguably pretty much one of the best civs in the game with your pick of map? That seems very interesting. Maybe he's just very confident with Ottomans. Maybe he thought he could maybe outpick Beasty, because maybe he's thinking that Beasty expects him to go Roos, right? And with that expectation, maybe he's trying to counterpick what he thought would be the choice against Roos, which I'm guessing Beasty was probably picking Byzantines with that thought in mind. Maybe that's the calculus, but that's really getting into the weeds, it feels like.
Yeah, I feel like the bigger thing is that maybe he's afraid that Beasty had a hard counter pick for Roos, and he was literally waiting it out until that goes out. Because again, it was in Numudan's hands which maps are being played next, because he was the one losing the games.
You're still 2-0,
I just feel
though,
like,
so you gotta
again,
pick the...
it's your number
Yeah.
one pick, you're down 2-0, and if you go out with your number one civilization pick being unpicked, it's going to look a little awkward. But maybe he's got something magical cooked up with Ottomans. Let's see how it goes. We're going to head into game number 3 here. Beasty's up 2-0. Let's see what Numudan can do with the Ottomans. And just to conclude that point, there is one counter-argument to all our conversation with the Roos. It doesn't matter if you lose 3-1 or 3-0 from a tournament standpoint
Yeah,
for Numudan.
gotta win it all.
So
But
perhaps...
again, can you get there? I mean,
yes, exactly.
You can only win the game in front of you, right? You can't win the game ahead if you don't win the game right now. And that's kind of where Numudan is at. So Beasty with Byzantines, Numudan with Ottomans. We'll see. Maybe he's got a really good Ottomans play and we're just going to be wowed by it. So let's find out. As early Dark Age Barracks Spear out on the field immediately. We've seen this before with House Lancaster. That was our first game of the day. We saw a very similar play where immediately through the Stealth Forest. Does Beasty see it? Ooh.
Oh, yep.
Yes, he does. I think he saw it.
Yeah, he saw it, but even if he didn't, he is going to spot the second one, or he would have spotted the barracks. Nonetheless, it's not just a matter of... it's not just a matter of the Dark Age aggression. I actually am a big fan of the Ottomans on this map. I like it quite a bit. Byzantines is going to be difficult to beat here in this rather historical matchup, come to think of it.
Yeah?
But this map has the tendency of dragging out in many cases, and when it drags, Ottomans become a late-game powerhouse here.
I mean, at the same time, so do Byzantines, right?
Fair.
But I mean, I won't disagree. If you can get Ottomans in Imperial Age, I mean, the Great Bombards can win you the game, essentially. But I'm never going to discount Beasty Byzantines in Imperial Age either. Little poke there on the gold. Not much going there. Onto the stone. I'm guessing that's going to be for military schools. I'd be beyond surprised to see a second town center in this meta. So it's going to be, I'm going to just say it, it's going to be for a military school.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right now, there's a bit of a harassment here, but Beasty gets everything he wanted from this. Notice that he front-loaded collecting all the gold. Oh, wow. Now, this is juicy. I love that. You're taking away the berries, and Beasty has no idea. Beasty apparently expected the Spearman rush. And I think it's a mistake to send the spears here, because now you're revealing that something is up there.
Yeah. You're kind of giving up the plot by... Well, does Beasty see it? I mean...
He does not, but maybe he suspects that something is up.
Maybe the outline? I mean, he sees the scout there.
I don't know how the foundations are shown for players, so maybe he's thinking about something being there. Nonetheless, Beasty decided to send a bunch of villagers on golden stone so he collects all that he needs before the spearmen can really do damage. So you see, he's up to 400 gold, 300 stone, going to now pull the villagers. It's going to slow down his age up to feudal age, though. Because do keep in mind that at the same time, he needed to essentially over-collect gold just so that he's got a buffer in feudal age. So in comparison, you see Numudan is getting closer and closer to feudal age, and I think Numudan's going to have a little edge clicking up.
Yeah, and the question is, does Beasty expect the tower here? He definitely knows that the spears are there. He's not moving out to that yet. That'll be interesting to see. Stone villagers getting harassed by the scout. They've been gathering for those cisterns. A really quick cisterning from Beasty. He set those up pretty quick. 3 on the way, 4th on the way now. Fast cistern play.
Yeah, this is a very, very heavy cistern play. That's going to be the 4th cistern all the way back. So, really, Beasty is not rushing feudal age whatsoever. He does have a decent amount of sheep under DC, and he's going Hippodrome.
Hippodrome! Now, this is an exciting pick.
Now, I wonder if this is a response to the berries being denied, or this was the plan all along. Because right now, you cannot really drop the vinery right next to the berries anyways.
Yeah, you can't. So maybe that is a response to that, because obviously he sees it now. He must be just doing this in pure response to the fact that the winery is just not going to happen right there. So he might as well get the Hippodrome, get some value out of it, which is, I'm guessing, what Numudan wants, right? Obviously, Numudan probably wants this kind of reaction from Beasty, or he wouldn't be putting the tower up there.
But you gotta wonder if pulling villagers wouldn't be enough, right? It's like if Beasty really wanted the
Akratoy? I mean, if they'd have gone that and maybe gone Akratoy, possibly? That's definitely always an option.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented that players will pull villagers just to torch down a single tower. It's not like a single tower is impossible to destroy. Mill is gonna be up, but for now it's probably just... Are we going to see pro scouts here? That would be weird, but I just feel like that's the direction we're heading.
I mean, you've got the Hippodrome, so you can make scouts, you can...
And you're rushing a mill right now. You're making a mill for an ecotech.
You got all those cisterns at home.
Okay, it's going to be wheelbarrow. Yeah, it was a coin flip between wheelbarrow or pro scouts. He didn't have the gold for pro scouts, but it was very clear that the mill was built for an ecotech, so it had to be either wheelbarrow or alongside the Hippodrome pro scouts. I'm still curious how the Hippodrome is going to fare, though. It's got to go together berries.
He's really, really relying on... He's really heavily in on these cisterns. Really hoping that'll bolster his eco enough to propel him through this, as Numudan's probably going to put on some pressure in a bit.
It's not a terrible idea if you think about it. You have full cistern buff at 6 minutes 30. That's
that pays such big dividends, right? Yeah, I mean, the returns on that are huge. And frankly, Numudan, I was mentioning, he'd probably turn on some pressure, but he's made 4 spears, and he has done pretty much nothing else.
Here's the thing with the cisterns, or, well, the early game economy in general. You cannot make villager production quicker. So every villager you have has a finite resource output. If you can find ways to boost that resource output, that's the best way to amplify your economy at the beginning. So in a way, this is the literal quickest way for Beasty to get as much out of his economy as he wants, or as he needs.
Spears getting onto the horseman. Horseman backing away in time. Arrow slits on that, but Beasty just doesn't seem to care. He's just kind of like, whatever. It's a bunch of berries. I don't care. I can make those at home.
It's a little misleading, though, because you might say, well, I don't care, but he's actually eating up his emergency reserves right now, the sheep.
That's true.
And he's still missing out on all the passive, all the boost that he would get from the berries otherwise. We have some archers coming in now, horsemen as well, so this is going to clean up this little spearman aggression. The question is how Numudan is going to follow this up. So far, he's been heavy on the military schools, but that's going to take time to materialize. It's going to take quite some time until those really start showing on the battlefield.
Moving out onto the map now. Beasty with some archers. Able to clean up the spears if he can catch up to him. And Sipahi in the queue now for Numudan. Beasty getting just all the upgrades. He's got wheelbarrow, getting double-sided broadaxe, getting fertilization, just getting everything he needs to really propel his eco. You know, there's not much that Numudan can do about this at the moment. Villager goes down. That's a nice pickup for Beasty. I like the idea of scaling into Sipahi if I'm Numudan. Sipahi are always a fun unit to use as Ottomans. Tricky thing is, though, is I'm sure Beasty wouldn't mind going into Limitane. But right now, he's just pretty content with the horses from the Hippodrome. And he's just kind of, it's like a 1TC boom almost, which feels weird to say. He's building units, obviously, with the resources he's getting, but he's got the eco upgrades coming in. He's trying to make the most of what he has. The tricky thing is kind of like you said, like, will he be able to stay on the food? Once the food at home is expunged, does he have enough wood to either transition to early farms or move out on the map for those resources that are just asking to be taken?
We're looking at the weakest window of the Ottomans right now. This is where you build up your military schools, but it takes so much time to really get the value out of them. And I like the heavy Sipahi play, but do keep in mind the Hippodrome is going to make up for a lot of the difference between the Horsemen and the Sipahi, and the numbers are just looking better for Beasty right now. Meteor does help a lot here, and the archers have to be pulled back. Spearman trying to close the gap. Spearman still standing strong, though, and Beasty is going to fight into the spears here. I don't know about that, even with the healing.
I don't think he has much of a huge choice. Sipahi were right on them. He was losing archers, but he's losing a lot of horsemen doing it.
That's a beautiful cleanup by Numudan, and the Spearman just absolutely making a minced meat out of Beasty's cavalry. And do keep in mind, Beasty doesn't have an awful lot of food to work with. His berries have been harassed. He depleted all his sheep. This is a really, really nice turnaround here for Numudan. Cleaned up a lot of Beasty's army. And look at this, Beasty has to invest into olive groves early on. Keep in mind, he still has... He's got a really nicely boosted economy by the cisterns, so that's something that makes up for the differential. And I guess the saving grace for Beasty is that Numudan cannot capitalize on this immediately because the military schools are slow producing troops.
Yeah, and that's the saving grace for Beasty for sure. And that fact that he's got level 5 cistern at home, so yeah, he's farm transitioning. But again, that's everything he's doing is playing into a longer game. He's gonna get some benefits down the road, and he's managed to do enough with his military that he had to give him some time. However, these villagers now, Akratoy coming out, ooh, civil defense force. Sipahi just barely gets away with an inch of his life. That was so close. I almost thought for sure one would go down. That's a lot of Sipahi now, though. Yeah. That's more than just military schools producing those.
Yeah, he's now spamming them. And Beasty doesn't have a single spearman. This is full cavalry. Sipahi, the Meteor is lagging behind, which is a bit of a problem, and Beasty has the ability to heal those, so this fight was miscalculated by Numudan. I would love to see him getting a couple more spearmen going, really. Beasty only has 4 archers.
Huge right here. And then we see, okay, you ask and you shall receive, my friend Lidicor, as we see the barracks coming up, 2 of them, to get some Limitane on the field, desperately needed. And Beasty sees the calculus and can see that as he looks down the road, more and more of the Sipahi horseman fights aren't really productive for him.
I think some of this style from Numudan is related to pinning Beasty inside his base and just forcing him to transition to olive groves. In the long run, that's going to be fine for Beasty, but right now it slows him down. And in comparison, Numudan is able to move out on the shorefish. He actually did that on multiple ponds. I just feel like Sipahi against Horsemen is not the best setup for him right now, although, as I'm saying that, the numbers are looking better and better right now for Numudan. And that could be a beautiful swing around. I don't think Beasty noticed. He is going to recognize it just in time. But that's a lot of Sipahi and a beautiful raid.
Thankfully for him, he's got some Limitane in the back, but not a lot of them. Enough to at least spook him away. Thankfully, the town center fire helps mitigate what could have been a really, really dangerous raid.
And these kinds of raids, Beasty cannot afford. The cisterns go both ways. They boost your economy by a crazy margin, but if your villagers are idle, they are absolutely useless for you. And look at what Numudan is doing. His eco was untouched, and now I don't think he's adding more Sipahi on his stables. It's pure military school production. All the resources he has is going into aging up, and he's going to have a massive lead in that regard.
Yeah, you mentioned on something I was going to say is that you know, he's not killing a ton of villagers, but the idle time is worth value for Numudan right now to stop Beasty from just going crazy. As we see, it only takes one.
Look at that.
It only takes one.
It only takes one nice little focus on the single lowest HP villager. That's a tiny detail, but that's the difference between getting a kill and not getting one. And look at the Sipahi count, it's 16. Beastie only has 7 cavalry units. He mostly has Limitani. And now another raid is coming in. Numudan is doing an exceptionally good job here. Just forcing idle time, forcing Beastie away from these berry patches. And while this is happening, he's going to age. And when he gets veterancy for the Sipahi, that's where things are going to start getting interesting. Plus, of course, with Castle Age, he can start leveraging the map control to grab the relics.
Beastie losing a villager from the tower, right as the tower crumbles from the Kurosiphan. But now that opens up some berries for Beastie, but he's going to be an age back and is still struggling to deal with all of these Sipahi as he comes back. Akratoy finally, the villagers say, no, get out of here.
Kill! That is unreal.
Gets the kill and doesn't lose the Sipahi doing it either. So Civil Defense Force, they pull out the shanks and try, but they can't do it. Numudan getting all these little wins that are starting to add up slowly and slowly. And eventually, if he keeps doing this, one will break the camel's back and we'll have another game.
Yeah, right now he's got a 6 villager lead, and that does not factor in the free units he's getting out of the military schools. Of course, Beastie does have the cisterns and has the olive oil, but that's not going to compensate forever against military schools. Relics now. I assume the relics should be coming in. Interesting choice. We're seeing crossbows from Numudan, though. It's a good all-purpose unit, but it feels a little wasteful against longbows, Limitani, and archers.
Yeah, like what are you countering with it? And the answer is, frankly, nothing.
And it's not a cheap unit. So, like, you wonder if crossbows are the right choice here. Kind of making a mix of everything, but still.
He's kind of just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
That could be massive, though. Numudan lost track of the cavalry, and Beastie is here to retaliate. Nice little reaction here by Numudan. Some of the villagers are caught off guard, though. You got to change direction. Indeed, just jump back and forth. I gotta say, I'm pleasantly impressed by the micro here from Numudan. He's been exceptional when it comes to unit control in this game.
Yeah, those villagers have got some good feet there. They're able to dive out of the way in time. Numudan's micro is impressive, and it's keeping him in this game. He's able to manage all these things simultaneously pretty well, not diving too deep, able to get away at the right time, saving the villagers where he can. As we see here, he wanted to dive, saw the danger, got away in time. Meanwhile, Beastie getting Golden Horn Tower, and this is where it gets dangerous. Beastie is Cistern level 5. He's getting the Olive Groves up. If you don't do enough damage, yeah, you can own the map, but Beastie in Byzantines only needs that little corner. As long as he can get the farms going and has some kind of access to gold, which he does right now, he'll be fine for the time being.
This is the window that Numudan needs to hit. He is going to have his Castle Age upgrades, but Beastie did a really good job walling off the right flank, and as you said, as the Byzantines, he can afford to play condensed for quite a while, whereas Numudan needs to be on the map. He needs to be on those spawns for shorefish, and Beastie now has the olive groves set up for sustainability. He also took out the towers, so he now has the other berry patch. And I think the biggest problem for Numudan right now is that he cannot really break into Beastie's base because the walls are up. So the best course of action for Numudan would be to leverage this for relics, but he's been fairly slow in that regard. Only 1 relic collected, no more on the way home.
I love this choice from Beastie. He had a lot of gold in the bank, and now he's spending it all on men-at-arms. Varangian guards coming out to bolster his units. I like this choice because what does Numudan have? Numudan does have some crossbows, actually. Those are going to actually be more useful now.
Yeah.
But overall, only Sipahi, spears, and archers for the bulk of things.
Did Beastie see the crossbows? That's the question. Because Varangi is into crossbows, especially with that thick of a front line with the Sipahi, is not a good choice. But I agree with you, Varangians, if there are not a lot of crossbows, Varangians do reasonably well against Sipahi. Sipahi are fairly fragile, so Varangians can do quite a bit against them.
One thing to consider here is access to gold. Both of Beastie's golds are in the front. He doesn't really have a good access to anything else. He could make a market and try and sell off some resources to kind of mitigate for the time being, but that gold vein now is his only resource and his only access. He's going to need to think about going out on the map for more eventually.
First man going away, and then Genisar is just popped. I don't think Beastie saw those. Those could be game changers. Matter getting picked off. Big loss here for Numudan, but And Janissaries contributing to this fight is it's a massive change up from the previous state of affairs. Nice little catapult raid here by Beasty. Numudan a little slow to notice, has to flee into the town center, loses a villager. 3 more relics are on the way home for Numudan though, and Beasty is starting to run out of food inside his base. I don't know how many olive groves he has.
Right, he's got a good number, but this mass outside of his base is looking spooky. And again, he's got no access to gold. That's what I'm a little more concerned about. Because if he wants to keep making premium units at all, he's not going to be able to for a second. That said, crash units could do quite a bit, as we see a nice mango shot right there, hitting a couple of the archers.
I don't like this for Beasty. He's got a bunch of Varangians. He's actually trying to full focus longbows and Varangians against Sipahi crossbow Janissary. It's not a combo that should, on paper, work for Beasty. Mango is being mismicroed here a little, now tries to close distance on the archers. Nice little choke point fight here for Numudan. He is fighting into a lot of Limitani with the cavalry, and maybe he's overstaying his welcome.
I think the Frisian guards are breaking through slowly. Remember that while Janissaries are pretty dang good, there's not quite enough of them to be a critical mass yet, and Varangians breaking through. The longbows, however, have Sipahi on them. They're backing up. Goldvilles are getting slaughtered amidst all of this.
Oh, that's gotta be over, though. The longbows were pushed away, so the crossbows and the Janissaries stayed alive. They pick off all of the Varangians, and a lot of villagers got caught in between all of this. About 10 villagers died on this gold mine. Now Beasty's down quite a bit, and it's not like he won this fight. In fact, if anything, he lost it. He's outnumbered 3-1 now with no tools to take out the heavy units.
Mango is just proving catastrophic. A couple of decent shots in there, but Sipahi are the real issue. They're still alive, still finding it. And the Janissaries behind this, I mean, there's no cavalry for them to counter, but they still do a pretty good base damage. And they'll take out Frisian guards fairly well.
Yeah, I wonder if... I don't like fighting under this DC, but maybe it's worth it for Numudan. Beasty's got 20 idols. He's running around those. A couple more cavalry units would be very beneficial for Numudan just to seal the deal and wipe out the villagers. Beasty is not one to tap out quickly, but the beating that he took is just massive.
Yeah, I like that Numudan's pushing back just right now. He pushed in a little bit, almost overextended, and is now keeping the DPS units, the range units, alive and backing up while he still can. I think Numudan chose his time right to back off a little bit.
Down 14 villagers, and do keep in mind, Numudan also has the majority of the relics, and the military schools are now coming online. They take a lot of time to become relevant. Now we're looking at a setup where military school is non-stop pumping, you have a bunch of passive resource income, whereas Beasty took a big beating on his economy.
Meanwhile, behind this, Numudan's getting the relics. He's got 3 and 1 more in hand right there that he just needs to have the micro to put in. I'm curious if we can take a look, if the observer could take a look at the vizier points. I want to double check those. I think the Janissary was the one that he used.
Yeah, he used up the Janissaries.
Yeah. Good to see. Standard stuff. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything there. A lot of crossbows now. 24 crossbows for Numudan is making the Varangian guard play just untenable, and Beasty's pretty much completely off of it, which works out because he didn't have gold anyways.
I love the sacred site play by Numudan. Start the timer. Beasty took a beating, so if you start a timer, it forces Beasty's hand to do something about it eventually. It's not a major rush, but it's not something that allows Beasty to just sit back and try to recover. It's something that Beasty is really good at. Takes a beating, sits back behind defenses, and then recovers. And if you look at the army numbers, he already did that. It's 58 to 51. Yeah. The army gap has closed up. But at the same time, walls are coming up on the other side, and the economy is still massively different for the two players. Beasty dropped the second DC. That's why he's catching up so quick. There's a second DC tucked away all the way to the north.
And we can't forget, again, we've said it a couple times, but it cannot be understated. Level 5 Cistern has been active this entire time. Beasty is just primed to pop off here. He just needs to survive and eventually regain some map control. He's starting to slowly do that here. Pretty big engagement, though. Numudan does have the better army here.
Yeah, Mango shot is beautiful on those premium troops on the front line. Beasty's sending over cataphracts.
The longbows are exposed in the back. There's nothing defending them. The Sipahi are all over them. There's nowhere to go. Finally, some spears coming in. Limitane trying to save him, but he lost a bunch.
A single Cataphract is absolutely wrecking the food eco of Numudan in the meantime. He was in the middle on the hunt, and a single Cataphract, which I guess now died, it was the one that was harassing that. That wasn't the first time. Beasty sent in Cataphracts before, he did it again, and that's going to be a consideration for Numudan. Beasty's eco is now, well, absent of the gold, Beasty's eco is now very safe and condensed, whereas Numudan is spread out quite a bit, so Beasty has opportunities to raid.
Yeah, and frankly, Beasty doesn't really want to go into heavy units outside of maybe some Cataphracts, because ranging guards into the crossbow mass is the ideal choice anyways. So I feel like Beasty can survive with what he's got, going in for more of a trash army and relying on the olive oil to kind of carry him a little bit. But he's got to keep this gold open for upgrades and other things, as we see Sipahi trying to get some villagers. Gonna find a couple. Meanwhile, the Mango still taking pot shots at the longbows. Another one just missing.
Yeah, Mango Towers will be difficult to breach, though, and keep in mind, most of the army here for Numudan is slow-moving. He needs to be careful not to overextend. But this raid is just beautiful, even though it kind of just bypasses all the villagers. I was going to say it's beautiful. I think he used Select All Military and just misclicked those Sipahi.
I think he did in his haste to try and micro this battle. Oh, man, the Mango shots are getting so much value out of that. Longbows going down.
And those Sipahi coming across the whole farmland will jump the longbows from behind, but they were so weak. That's an opportunity lost. Beasty was focused on this fight, and he could have easily lost 5-6 villagers to those Sipahi back at home.
Yeah, but likewise, Numudan was also so focused on the fight that he mismicroed that a little bit. Because, yeah, that was a perfect spot.
And this is a bad timing for Numudan.
Run.
He wants to go into Imperial, and he just lost his entire army doing so.
Can't do that. I know he wants to, and if Ottomans can get to Imperial, it'd be super hard to stop, but he didn't quite get the knockout blow that he was looking for to do so. He's floating gold, though.
He had the food to age up, then he doubled down. He had to double down because now he's being pushed. He wanted to go Imperial. I still feel like the biggest problem was that he was slamming his head against a brick wall. And we talked about this. He cannot overstay his welcome at that position because most of his army was slow moving, and fair enough, he was chased back into his base, and now his entire army is being cleaned up, and this might be it for Beasty. Now he's picking off villagers, and we could see a turnaround here real quick. Villager gap non-existent anymore, and Numudan's army is just unable to hold this.
My, how the pendulum swings in the other direction, and this is what we say about Beasty being able to stick it through thick and thin, able to hold and hold and hold. And now, maybe he's overextending just a little bit here, but boy, does it feel like it's good because he's delayed the age up from Numudan by a lot. Numudan's sitting on 3,200 gold. He is rich as can be, but he just can't spend it. And there goes the Istanbul Observatory coming up. Beasty, not missing a second, immediately drops some rams. He wants to do damage today.
The observatory is all the way down south. It's like a very weird spot here. Beasty is not going to... Oh, Beasty might actually find it. I think he's going to be late to the party. He's not going to be able to stop it. But this is a rather dangerous spot, to say the least. At least a couple of villagers could fall. And I love how Beasty is now doubling down on this. He can afford to lose that army, because all he is waiting for is those 2 TCs to really pay off.
Yep.
And he feels like there is a lot of damage to be done, and that's exactly the case. He's getting some Hero Siphon going, and look at that! Sure, the observatory goes up, but so many villagers fall for Numudan, and he doesn't have the buffer of a second TC. He has the relics, he's got the military schools, but that's basically it.
And I don't know if that's quite enough. I mean, it helps a lot, and thankfully the second TC hasn't paid off yet, but long term, it's going to be tough, especially when the military schools are lighting on fire. Mango goes down. This might just be it. This could be an Imperial Agent to GG if Beasty can maintain the pressure. Beasty now has map control, is able to get back onto the gold. Now he can make the heavy units and continue to pump out the Varangians with no crossbows to be heard from Numudan. Beasty's
nothing. Numudan has to flee his farmlands. And this is a big difference between the two players. Beasty's farms were never really directly targeted. They were harassed, but there was never a moment where a whole army broke in there and villagers just had to flee for their lives. Now, all the mosques are gone, so you don't have your relics anymore. 360 no-scope from that Kira Siphon to the south.
Yeah, this feels like Numudan had victory in his fingertips, and it slipped through. like he was boxing BC in, and there is GG called it. So close to making something really good. I was gonna have to start saying, like, actually Ottomans was a really good pick here. I didn't have to praise Numudan for not going for Roos, and he gave it a good run, gave it a good ride, but ultimately falls to Beasty 3-0.
I think Ottomans were a good pick, and I think the score does not do Numudan justice, because this game was really good from him. The first half, his unit control was exceptional. The way that he sniped the low HP villagers, the way that he microed his villagers away from enemy cavalry, it's been outstanding. The problem is that he... this is actually the wrong graph, by the way. This is the previous game, the Knights Templar and the Mongols. But nonetheless, the thing I wanted to point out is that I think he miscalculated his move as he was trying to age up. There was this whole almost collapse-like event at minute 23-24 where his army was caught off guard as he was trying to age up, and then everything just snowballed out of control. That one decision, or that one event where his army was not in the right position as he was trying to age up, he was a little overextended, is what kind of snowballed this game out of control. Up until that point, he was in a definitive lead, I would say.
Yeah, it felt like he had command of this game for quite some time. You almost hate to see it, right? Because nothing feels worse than when you have a game and you feel victory is in your sight and then it slips away. Few things feel worse than that. And, you know, you got to give credit to Beasty, too. I think this 5-cistern build that he had here, I mean, that paid dividends, right? Because he didn't have to worry about setting things up. It was already there, and he paid for it a lot throughout this game until suddenly he got his opportunity. And then that 5-level cistern with the second TC coming in behind to really bolster him really paid off in the end. And that was the long game that he was waiting for, right? Like, he played that from the beginning, knowing he wanted the late game, have his stuff set up and ready to go for when he needed to flip the switch, he could. And then we saw exactly that play out here.
Yeah, it's the only thing that was real bad for Beasty with that whole setup is that he lost 15 villagers in the crossfire at that fight near his base.
Yeah.
So that whole cistern idea kind of fell apart a little because you had way less villagers to boost. But he quickly added a second TC and reboomed way quicker. Well, I think he reboomed at the exact rate we anticipated, but he was very decisive in terms of what to do. The moment he lost those villagers, he said, okay, I gotta go for a second TC. That's what he did. And again, the 5-cistern build, the way that he dealt with that early spear and tower aggression, and he picked up all the stone he needed for the cisterns before the spearmen really could do enough damage.
Exactly. And well, you know, Roos snuck through the draft and we didn't see it. Crazy to think that it got through and we did not see it. I can't help but wonder, maybe if Numudan should have pulled it out a little earlier, use the advantage while you have it for sure. Instead, he falls 3-0 and EC will be moving on, playing on in the playoffs.
Well, I'm sure Beasty also has some thoughts to share about the Civilization draft here, because we're going to have a very quick winners interview with Beasty. He is going to be the one moving on to the playoffs, and he is going to face off against Anatend if everything goes by the books. Anatend is already waiting for his opponent there. But yeah, just looking at this series in hindsight, some good games from Numudan, though. Like, we have to give him credit. He's going up against arguably one of the obviously one of the most accomplished players of the AoE 4 scene, but it's I think pretty fair to say that Beasty is one of the candidates to win it all in this tournament. He always is. He's been like that for the last quite a few events. For the last few years, he always went into events, you know, at least top 4, but he is there fighting for the championship. It's always difficult to go up against a player like that, and I think Numudan took a step up. Let's hear what Beasty has to say about the series, though. Let's take a look at Beasty's perspectives. Here is your winner's interview. All right, hello. I certainly do respect your authority. I don't know if Numudan always did in this series. What are your opinions, real quick, brief rundown of the series in your perspective?
Can you hear me, first of all? I had some
yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Just checking. I actually practiced a bit with Numudan and so when I saw that I'm gonna play him, I was like, oh well, that's unfortunate. So it's always interesting to play against the players that you practice against, because obviously you have some expectations or a little bit more knowledge in what they play. So yeah, Numudan is actually really good. I feel like the result doesn't show like how much he's improved recently. I mean, even at the last game, I should have lost that, but managed to come back. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with this series, obviously, since I did win. So.
All right, I want to look at the draft real quick, because one of the things that we've been discussing on the broadcast is that you allowed Rus to go through in the Civ draft, not something that's very commonly done, and you instead banned Byzantines. So what was the mindset behind that, if you can share that?
I mean, it was more like a player thing. I know Numudan likes to play Byzantine, and I like to play Byzantine too, so... he first picked Rus, right, so I couldn't veto it at the end, so I kind of went for Biz there, but I think once you go down to like third veto, it's more of a preference. It's not so much like vetoing overpowered stuff. It's just like, oh, this guy plays this, I'll just remove that, or securing yourself that pick, something like that.
Were you surprised that Numudan did not go for Rus whatsoever across this series?
I mean, he was probably going to play it on Carmel or Relic River, I think. Most likely was going to play Rus and Carmel, but I had a HRE there, so felt pretty comfortable there, or maybe even something else, just to throw it out there. But I think Rus is obviously very, very good, but I've played against it quite a bit, so I'm not too worried.
All right, let's look ahead to your upcoming series, though. You're now in the top 8, and you're going to be up against Anatund. How do you feel about that matchup? What's your first impression?
I feel pretty good. I feel like every tournament that starts, initially I just get destroyed left and right, and then I'm like, okay, so this doesn't work, this doesn't work, I shouldn't pick that, and then like the longer the tournament goes, I feel like it's better and better for me. It's like the scariest early on, right? So had 2 tough losses, but I think now I'm ready to play, so I'm looking forward to playing against Anatund.
All right, anything else you want to share to the fans before we let you go?
No, I hope you guys enjoy the games. I'm excited to watch the next series, and that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys tomorrow, I guess, when I play.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Congrats for the top 8, and indeed, we are going to see your series tomorrow. That was Beasty, top 8 now. Hopefully, he's hoping to be more than just top 8 in this tournament.